Hello there everybody, Sam's Trains here and welcome back to the railway. Today I'm looking at some bargain wagons by Hornby. The latest private owner wagons announced are by Rapido, and at the retailers these cost £27.95. And I have to say, for me, this seems like an awful lot of money for a single wagon. Now, speaking of the Rapido wagons that I have looked at, I have to say, to be fair to them, these are excellent models. They're premium models. They tend to be heavier than wagons from other brands. They tend to have more detail, more separate parts, that kind of thing, and more features as well. For example, they've got separate metal bearings on the axles. But I often find myself thinking, is this really what the average person is looking for when they decide to buy a wagon? Are people really wanting to spend about 30 quid on a single wagon? And for some people, I can imagine the answer being undoubtedly yes. Let's say you're looking to build a small industrial shunting layout that's only going to have 5 wagons to its name. I can totally understand somebody wanting to make sure that those 5 wagons are the best 5 wagons that money can buy. But for me, that is not the case. I would personally prefer to spend less on each wagon and maybe get a few more of them just for the sake of variety. You know, I'm happy to sacrifice the metal bearings. I'm not convinced that they really do much good on a piece of rolling stock. I would be happy to lose a bit of the detail because from a distance, all wagons look about the same, at least in my opinion, unless you're scrutinising them up close. But then again, who spends all their time scrutinising the wagons on a layout? Not me. I'm looking at the locomotives and the scenery. And do you know what? I'm even happy to forego the sprung buffers, which is a lot for me to say, but if it means I can get a few more wagons for my money, I would do that. Not that the Rapido wagons even have sprung buffers, I don't think. But yeah, you know what I mean. I just miss the days when a wagon used to cost £10. But obviously you've got to be realistic and accept that those days are gone. Or are they? Well, the latest Oxford Rail wagons are pretty close. This is their newly announced 7-plank wagon, which costs £14.40. So that's about half the price of a Rapido wagon. And of course, it's got less frills, they're much lighter, a little bit simpler in the detail, but from a distance, you can't really tell the difference, at least I can't. And that's half the price. You can get about 2 of those for the price of one Rapido wagon. So would I prefer that? Yes, I think I would. But that's not quite a tenner, is it? That's not quite what wagons used to be. Well, funny you should say that. That's where this video is going. So recently Hornby had a sale. Now I say that, it sounds like it's a one-off event. Obviously that's not the case. I think Hornby almost always have a sale on these days. I think they have a sale on more often than they don't have a sale on. And I was able to pick up this wagon pack for £30.14. So a couple of pounds more than a Rapido wagon at the retailers, except for that money I got 3 wagons here instead of just 1. So what I want to think about today is, would I rather have 3 Hornby wagons for £30, 2 Oxford wagons for £30, or 1 Rapido wagon for £30? I'll give you my answer once I've looked at these, but please do comment down below and let me know what your answer is. Also, if you'd like to check out some of Hornby's triple wagon packs, I will pop an affiliate link down in the description. But for now, for the first time in many a year, let's take a look at what £10 each can get you for a simple open wagon. Alright, a Hornby triple wagon pack in packaging that very well disguises the wagons that we've got here. I've actually not clapped eyes on these yet, so we'll do that in just a second. If I stand the box up like this, I can show you the end, show you what's in here. So this pack is R60104. It's the pack of 3-plank wagons, and it's got Dennerby, it's got a cooperative wagon, and then the bottom one is Hall and Company. So 3 different wagons, so that's great for variety's sake, isn't it? Let's pull these out then and see exactly what we get. I guess I'm going to take this top one first. Ah, gosh, it's tight in there. And here it is. Whoa, that's large lettering, isn't it? Crikey. All right, so as you can see, highly decorated. That's really good to see. Let's pull this out of here and let's see exactly what sort of quality we're dealing with here. Remember, £10? Cool, that's not a lot of money. It's been a long time since you could get a modern wagon for that kind of price, at least a Hornby one. So, no accessories, I notice. So let's go straight in and open this up and pull it out. All right. So there it is, the Hornby wagon. As you can see, the decoration is absolutely beautiful here. We've got metal buffers, clearly. We've got tension lock NEM couplings, metal wheels, not in separate bearings, of course, but quality metal wheels nevertheless. Yeah, to me, this is all I really look for in a piece of rolling stock. So yeah, that is gorgeous. Let's go on for the second wagon then. I forget which one this was, but I think the next one's the cooperative one. Ready? Oh yeah, that's different. So, I don't know, what's this first one? Is it a 7 plank or? Yeah, I think it's a 7. 1, 2, 3, 4. No, that's a 7 plank. It looks as though this one here is maybe a 4 plank. So we've got some variety there. I said I wanted variety, so I think I got my wish. And this is an interesting sort of sludgy morning after a curry, brown, which I don't think I have anywhere else in my collection. So let's pull this one out. Oh yeah, very differently painted. So different interior colour, as you can see. Oh, I really like that colour. That looks so good. And again, beautiful printing on the side. So yeah, very similar wagon in design, actually. Yeah, the underframe's really good, actually. Didn't realise it was going to be as good as that, with the NEM tension locks and metal wheels, of course. Yeah, that looks fantastic. So that's the second one. And how many planks was this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Ah, it's a 5 planker. All right. And then one more wagon then. I'm buzzing about these for £10. Okay. Yep, Hall and Company. So that looks... maybe, is that a 7 planker again? We'll see, we'll see. Let's pull this one out. Ah, tight boxes. They do make you work for it these days. But, you know, it's a tenner. I'm happy to shred my fingers on the packaging. All right, Hall and Company. Let's pull this one out, shall we? Okay. And there it is up close. So yeah, a little bit less complex on the printing perhaps, but then there's more detail picked out on the side. Is this the same as the Dennerby wagon? Yes, a tentative yes, I'm going to say. At a glance it seems to be. Obviously it's a different colour though, and the printing is quite different. So we've got technically, I suppose, 2 different wagons here, or if you include the differences in decoration, we've got 3. But either way, yep, for a tenner each, these seem absolutely great. So let's have a close look at these, see what sort of detail you get. And then of course, later on, we'll see how these perform. And I guess I will compare their performance to a Rapido wagon to see what kind of difference the lack of bearings actually makes. So here you have it then, a close look at Hornby's triple pack of wagons. And these are lovely wagons. They're basic, as we're going to see, but for me they are just the job. They look good enough from a distance and they're affordable enough that I can justify having them in my collection. So let's talk about weight then. So the smaller cooperative wagon, that weighs in at 25 grams, and the larger couple of wagons are a bit heavier at 27 grams, whereas my Rapido SECR wagon, that weighs 30 grams. So these are lighter than your typical Rapido wagons. Decoration wise, they're done pretty well. Here's a close look at the Dennerby, a little bit patchy in places up close, but otherwise the printing is very good. You can also see that some of the details that have been picked out have just been done with a tampo print, which means the sides of the parts are still left the original base colour, which in some places, for example on the support struts on the cooperative wagon, it doesn't look the greatest, so perhaps not the most refined in the world, but again, from any sort of distance, they're okay. They are quite limited in terms of separately fitted parts, so these handrails, for example, these are clearly just a part of the moulding, and this is the sort of thing you'd expect to be separately fitted on a £30 Rapido wagon, but here of course they are just a part of the moulding, and that goes for most of the parts on the wagon, which potentially could have been separately fitted. Here's a look at the interior of the wagons. Yes, they are detailed, which is really cool to see. There are moulding marks on the interiors though, which, yeah, does have a bit of an impact on their realism. I have to say the Rapido SECR wagon that I'm looking at doesn't have marks like that. So yeah, the Rapido wagons are certainly more refined, and this is particularly obvious on the underframe. So this is the Hornby underframe, as you can see. A surprising amount of detail, but it is compromised a little bit by the couplings here with their large springs. Yeah, as you can see, those are not dreadfully realistic. And then you've got the clips where the upper body clips onto the chassis. Those are very clearly visible on the underside. The refinement is better on your typical Rapido wagon, so again, that is a key difference. The wheels though, Hornby's wheels, very, very good. Yeah, these look great. You've got the brake rigging as well. Some of this is separately fitted, which you wouldn't necessarily expect at this price. But yeah, we have got some small separate etched parts. I think the brake handles, these are etched. That's cool to see. And then on the buffer beams, we do have metal buffers, which are not sprung, but metal, so that's quality. And unfortunately, we don't have any couplings to put on the hooks. Although I say that, my £30 SECR Rapido wagon also didn't come with couplings, which is questionable, isn't it, given the price. So these don't either. I know some of the Oxford wagons do actually come with 3 links or whatnot to put on those hooks, but not these, unfortunately. And then feature-wise, these wagons have NEM couplings, so you can exchange the couplings freely. That's nice and modern. That makes them usable by most, I would say. And the wheels do seem to be very free-rolling, although, like I say, there are no separate bearings on these wagons. And we'll test that in just a moment. So no sense in going into any more detail than that. Hopefully these close-ups will have showed you what we're dealing with here. Yeah, they are simple wagons. That's reflected in the price, of course, making these a really good budget option. So, you know, you can buy wagons to taste, can't you? If you want to spend £30 on a wagon and get more refinement and a little bit more detail and a touch more weight in the bearings, you can do. But also for people like me who prefer to spend less and get a little bit more in terms of quantity, maybe a little less quality, then that's an option as well, and that is my preferred option personally. But anyway, what about performance? How free-rolling are these? Do they work correctly? Let's get these wagons down onto the track and do some testing. Here is today's test setup then. So I've chosen the Hornby B2 as a classic shunting locomotive. I've got a few other Hornby and Bachmann wagons set up, and of course today's wagon pack on the track ready to be tested. Right, first thing then, the free rolling test. I decided to start by testing that Rapido SECR wagon with the bearings, and as you can see it's very nice and free rolling, making it to the first set of curves after the signal box. Here comes one of the Hornby wagons though. This is the cooperative one, 5 grams lighter, don't forget. This did much better. It went way past where the Rapido wagon stopped and made it right near to the bottom of Gordon's Hill actually. So it seems as though the lack of bearings is actually much better. But obviously bear in mind this Hornby wagon is brand new out of the box. The Rapido wagon is a little bit older. Looking at the original footage from when the Rapido wagon was brand new, it did do better. It did make it down towards the bottom of Gordon's Hill. Even so though, the difference is almost unnoticeable. I think the Rapido went slightly further, but only very slightly further. There's not a lot in it. I do think the bearings will improve the longevity of the wagon. They should last longer, but then again, I've never worn out a wagon with plastic bearings. So I don't think the metal bearings are important, frankly. I mean, it's nice to have, and I do think a wagon that costs almost £30 should have them, and it should have everything it possibly can for that amount of money. But it's certainly not something to worry about if you're buying cheaper wagons that don't have that feature. It's not that important, not as important as in a locomotive where there's a lot more weight and motion at play. Anyway, let's test the couplings. Let's back up with the B2. Gently does it. Hang on. The coupling hook on this wagon is not correctly lined up, so let's try that again. There we go, we got it now. So that's one coupled, another one coupled. B2 not being dreadfully smooth. That one, oh, that one didn't couple. That one pushed back. Let's try that again. Come on, B2, goodness me. It's a sleepy loco. It probably needs warming up, actually. Let's try again. Did we get it? Yep, got it in the end, and I think the other wagons have disappeared out of shot, so yep, you can see those there. Let's pull into those. And coupled. So yep, couplings seem to be at the right height. Yep, everything's coupled. All right, with that then, let's pull the pecket forwards a little bit. And let's do the points test. Okay, did I go far enough? Yeah, I think I did. Right, backing up then, let's see how this goes. Hopefully without issue. Yep, they all went over the first set nicely. Second set. Okay, perfect. So let's ramp things up then. Let's make this a bit more extreme and go faster. I'm not hearing any clanking or clacketing over, oh, that's a cool word, as it goes over the points, so I'm not expecting any issues. Yeah, that's full speed. Yeah, it's fine. Well, almost fine. I think we disconnected the brake van there. But that was not the failure of any of today's couplings. That was some of the other wagons I put on, so let's bring that back. I don't know how that happens, to be honest. What happened to them being tension locked? I suppose the tension was removed in reverse, though. Anyway, let me get back into position. Oh. All right, and here they go around the layout. All right, here we go, and they've done the tight points, so these curves should be child's play now for these wagons. And don't they look lovely as they run along? I'm actually really pleased with these. For £10, they are just the job. Now, obviously, much more expensive models by the likes of Rapido and Bachmann, etc. Are they better than these? Yes, they are better, but I'm not convinced that they're triple the price better. Now, obviously, they're only triple the price because I got these in the sale. At the normal prices, these Hornby wagons are more expensive. Not convinced they're quite worth the full price, as usual. But even so, you know, your Oxford wagons, they cost half the price of a Rapido wagon, approximately. And consequently, I think those are better value. So yeah, there's nothing wrong with saving a bit of money and buying slightly cheaper wagons. You do get what you pay for. You might get less refinement and less detail. But if you're not too bothered about that, then buying cheaper wagons like this is a really good move, because as you can see, they still look excellent from this kind of distance. The performance is almost totally indistinguishable from more expensive wagons, so that's not a concern. And if you're smart about it and you wait for the sales to come around or whatnot, you can get 3 times as much wagon for your money, as I did here, getting these at a few pence over a tenner a piece. What crazy times we live in. So yeah, there you have it. Love these wagons. Very basic, but enjoyable and, more importantly, functional. Let's have some ratings then for Hornby's private owner wagons. Level of detail is a bit of a mixed bag. Obviously, these are not as complicated and as detailed as more modern, more expensive wagons, but they've still got a few things going for them. I mean, the decoration is very decent on the whole. The moulding quality, still good, despite the age of these wagons now. And areas of the model still look perfectly good. I mean, the brake rigging, totally acceptable. On the downside though, the underframe is compromised a little bit by the body clips and the large tension lock couplings. Not a fantastic design. We've got moulding marks on the interior, a lot of reliance on moulded detail as well, so the handrails, different components, most of these are just a part of the moulding. It doesn't have sprung buffers and it doesn't have any couplings to put on the real coupling hooks. So missing quite a lot, that's why I've given it 2-star, but for the money, they're perfectly reasonable for the price in terms of detail. The important one then, performance, can't fault these. Absolutely fantastic. Their free rolling is great. The couplings work well, the wheels are nice and straight with no wobbling or anything like that. Perfect performance around curves, over points. Can't fault it. They passed every test with flying colours. So yeah, that's really good to see. If these didn't perform perfectly, I would not be able to recommend these wagons. Quality then is pretty good on the whole. Now the quality is good because of how simple these are. There's just not a lot that can go wrong with them. They don't get 5-star because of the plastic construction. They are quite a bit lighter than more expensive wagons, and the decoration wasn't perfect up close, as I said, a little bit patchy, but otherwise they're just the job, can't fault them for the money. Value for money then, let's talk about this. So obviously for £30.14, that's what I paid for this pack. That's literally £10 per wagon. Obviously that would be a 5-star. The RRP though is only £66.99, which means at the absolute full price, which almost nobody pays, we're still only talking £22 each for these wagons. That's way cheaper than some of the more premium models. With the retailer discount, we're talking £20 or less at the most, really. So fantastic value, really, really good. 4.5 star, probably the best value private owner wagons you can get. I would say the Oxford ones are even better because they're £14.40, was it? Yeah, £14.40 at the full retailer price, and those are very similar to these, possibly even with a bit more refinement. So overall that is 7.09 out of 10, or a grade of D. Yeah, obviously that reflects how basic these models are, but they look fine, they work well. On the whole, I'm really quite pleased with these. For a tenner a piece, I am not going to complain. Into the logbook they go then, and they're 5th place above the Stanier coaches by Hornby and below Hornby's ZUA Shark. So if you can find some of these at a good price, I would definitely recommend picking them up. Alright folks, well that will just about do it for this review, and please do feel free to weigh in on this debate. Where do you place yourself on the spectrum of different wagons? Is cheaper better for you? Do you not mind too much about the features and details? Or perhaps do you see the value in paying extra money to get slightly heavier models with more separate parts and the bearings and possibly even sprung buffers and 3-link couplings and whatnot? What do you value in your wagons? What do you think is a fair price to pay for a modern, super detailed private owner wagon like this? Please do let me know. For now though, I think that's all I've got to say on this subject for now, so thank you very, very much for watching, and I'll see you again very, very soon for another review. Alright, cheers folks, you take care.